America is home to 33 million small businesses, the beating heart of communities across the country.
And proof that the American dream is still alive.
This is a show about those dreamers and doers and the communities they serve.
Their real life stories.
Their struggles and successes.
Their grit, determination, and passion.
And the people who fight
to keep their American dream alive.
I'm Alfredo Ortiz.
I'm Elaine Parker.
And it's time for another episode of Main Street Matters,
America's small business megaphone. Hi, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Main Street Matters, America's small business megaphone. I'm Elaine Parker, the president of the Job Creators Network Foundation. Today, we are joined by Gene Marks. Gene is a best-selling author, business keynote speaker, and columnist. He has spent 2 decades running both a successful business and interacting with influential leaders across industries and speaking before them regularly. Gene, thanks so much for joining us on the show.
Thanks, Elaine. And by the way, you guys do just great work. So thanks for all the work that you guys are doing, advocating and representing small businesses. Thank you.
Well, thank you. And I love having somebody like yourself on. You're a CPA, and
Right.
But because of that, your clients are small business owners.
Yeah.
And so you're hearing firsthand about their challenges, about what they need policy-wise, how certain policies may be hurting specific industries.
Yes.
I think that's so powerful, and it makes you such a powerful spokesperson, essentially, for small business. I'm a spokesperson for small businesses, so we're kind of comrades, if you will, in this war of helping small businesses. Tell me a little bit about some of the biggest challenges that you hear from your small business owners that they're facing in the last 4 years. I mean, even now.
Sure. Yeah, of course. So first of all, just by way of background, so I do I am a CPA and I do a lot of writing at a lot of major media platforms. And then I get invited to speak to a lot of different groups. So I speak about 50 to 60 times a year to, I think we said this before we started recording, to the world's most boring and unsexiest industries around, like the corrugated container manufacturers and pipe distributors and metal framing.
So important.
They are the backbone of
yes.
the country and the economy. And when I look out at my audiences, can be anywhere from 150 to 5,000 people across all different industries. They are all, and again, by the way, demographics, mostly men still, although I see a growing number of, women now in the audience, which is great. Mostly white men, although I do see more color in the audience, which is always great as well. But these are people that are running companies all across the country and all different aspects. And they are all dealing with all the main challenges. There are, yes, in certain industries, there are specific challenges. I get that. But the one thing that I've learned is that 80% to 90% of the problems that a business has are pretty much the same across all industries. Mm-hmm. It's regardless. Sort of the issues that people are having this year. I mean, we're all dealing with rising costs and cash flow issues. And, coming out of supply chain, but inflation is still, kind of, biting in different areas. So people are trying to navigate their way around that. Tariffs obviously are having an impact on that as well. We can talk about that. In addition, there's still an environment of higher cost of capital. So it's, the prime rate is still 7.5%. Mm-hmm. So, that's the prime rate. So if you're running a good business, you're a good customer, that's the rate you get. Most of the people I talk to are paying 8.5%, 9.5%, a couple points above that. So it's harder to raise money and get financing.
Gene, I was just going to ask, what are the practical implications for people who, don't run a small business and kind of aren't on those front lines and don't understand how these higher interest rates impact the decisions that a small business owner has to make on a daily basis?
Yeah, I'll give you a specific example. I have a client that's in Bucks County, Pennsylvania, and they buy and sell paper. Okay, and film and paper. They have opportunities to buy paper from other vendors around the world, but they don't have the capital to do that. So they have to borrow the money to do that. So from a working capital loan to afford to pay the paper, bring the paper in, sit on the paper process it for 30 days, and then turn around and resell it, which all sounds well and good, except they have to borrow money at 9.5% because that's what their working capital loan pays. Now, 5, 6 years ago, that working capital loan was half the cost, even less. So that adds costs and that takes away from their margins, which leaves less money over for them to hire people or to pay different overhead bills or to expand or to invest. So the cost of capital is a really big deal for them. And a lot of businesses suffer, the exact same thing. So it's manufacturers, distributors, people in the construction industry, anybody that needs, capital to afford their inventory are now seeing higher costs to be able to buy that inventory. And again, that just trickles down to all parts of their business. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's a whole domino effect, and I
It is.
just sometimes I think people don't sort of see the implications, down the line of my costs are high. So
Hmm.
when capital is expensive, small business owners make different decisions
Yes.
versus when they can borrow at less expensive costs. When capital is expensive, they may choose not to buy that new piece of equipment because it's just too expensive. They may choose not to hire that new person, or buy that new delivery truck or something like that because the borrowing costs are so high.
Yeah, and if I can add to that, you're absolutely right. When capital is expensive for their customers, that obviously has an impact on the products that they sell. So I was telling you before we started recording, I just came back. I was speaking to this big construction group in Wisconsin. So they do a lot of home construction and are involved in the real estate business there. They struggle because mortgage rates are high. So people don't want to sell their homes at a 3% mortgage when and then get a 7% mortgage, which is where we're in that range right now. So and that's driven by inflation because mortgage rates depend on really what the treasury markets are doing, and banks set their rates based on inflation expectations. So that has a trickle down effect as well, because then that impacts their revenues and obviously their growth, and their ability to hire and their ability to invest. So cost of capital works in a lot of different ways. Has a lot of impact on businesses.
But we've seen inflation come down. I mean, from the
It
highs
has.
of 9% in the first and second year of the Biden administration, to now, we had the about 2.5 in May, ticked up just a little bit
Yep.
this month, but
And
it
by the way,
seems.
not to interrupt you, that it ticked up to 2.7, but which doesn't seem to get much attention, the producer price index, rate of inflation, actually fell this past month. No one seems to want to talk about that because everybody wants to talk about inflation and tariffs and the Trump administration is killing, businesses. When it's producer prices is the leading indicator, that's what things are going to cost 6 months from now when those producer prices turn into actually end user products. So let's just keep that in mind, that inflation has become more manageable, and actually a lot of the B2B businesses that I'm working with are navigating their way around the inflationary effects that they have seen of coming off of the pandemic, tariffs, things like that.
So why won't the Fed reduce the rates?
Well, you're gonna have to ask the Fed that question. I mean, that is it is an issue. I got to tell you something, Elaine. I know they rely on their numbers, their economic data. I've been writing about this stuff for 20 years, and I have learned firsthand that the economists, the academics, the bureaus and governments that report this information, I've I've less and less relied on them, and I tell my clients to do the same thing. I mean, they continuous to get wrong. They were wrong in 2009. They were wrong about inflation just recently. They were wrong about the economy. Now everybody was predicting recession this year, and now all these brilliant economists coming back around and saying, "Oh no, we're expecting growth," and the Fed relies on those numbers. When I look at numbers that come out of the government, just like Bureau of Labor, I mean, last year the New York Times reported that the Department of Labor revised their job numbers by like 818,000. Remember that? Because
Yes.
it's just so. When you ask like why would they they rely on numbers that I sometimes am questioning dubious about, and I wish that Jerome Powell would come to all these groups that I talk to in all these industries and hear how they're doing and what they're doing and what the economy is really like out there. And these people are they want more options for financing and would absolutely take advantage of a lower rate. That would not be an inflationary thing. But again, you'd have to ask the Fed that question because it
Well, I mean, a lot of
baffles
people
me.
thought it was super premature for the Fed to cut rates last year 3 times.
Yeah,
And even 8 weeks before a general election. And the data wasn't as positive. And I just like, I don't understand. And I'm not an economist, but I've read enough of these reports and I see the numbers. And I think, why not cut? If you saw the inflation tick up, the producer price index tick up, which is the better
sure,
measurement,
sure.
then he could always cut rates again, or I'm sorry, increase rates again,
Right,
if you saw some negative impact from it. But right now, all of the indicators are screaming for a rate cut so that we can continue with this recovery. I mean, it doesn't make sense to me, other than I think right now, obviously, the fallout for him is coming from one side, and it's probably a lot of pressure. And I think if he got it from the other side, maybe he just would feel like he didn't have any friends at this point. I'm not sure.
right. I'm also not sure as to what more information Chairman Powell needs. I mean, the economy itself has proved to be so resilient. We continue to grow, and the industries that I talk to continue to they're doing okay. They could be doing a lot better,
Mhm.
even in wake of all the tariffs that they face and all of the headwinds and all of the issues with international trade and global trade or whatever. I'm not really seeing that. I'm seeing people like again across all industries they're navigating their way around it, and the interest rates that they're faced with right now is just holding them back from growing even more. And there is this people seem to be terrified about inflation, but as you just said, I mean inflation itself is down to like pretty. I mean I don't know how old you are. Like I'm 60. So I remember when I was in high school, not that I was paying that much attention, but when inflation and interest rates are north of 15%. You know what I mean? So, where we are right now is it could certainly go lower, and I think that businesses would benefit from this. But I just don't know what the tipping point would be for the chairman. I don't know.
I'm going to ask you to pull out your crystal ball. Like, what do you foresee with the tariffs? I mean, we had this, in April, it was a pause where they said 90
Yep.
days, they want to have 90 deals. We haven't seen as many deals come through, but we have seen some significant deals come through,
Yeah.
with the UK, China. We're seeing, I mean, those are significant trading partners. So, like, I don't care as much if we get a deal with, some very tiny little country that we don't do a lot of trading with
Of
anyway.
course.
Like, that would be insignificant. The media would be pouncing upon that and saying, well, that's insignificant. We don't trade with them that much. But when we're getting deals that we've gotten, although they're not in, big numbers, the
Sure.
deals have been significant. So what is your sort of future look on
I have
where we
thoughts.
will land?
I do have thoughts. So for starters, people get very surprised. They call Trump about the taco name and that he's he waffles or he decides, goes back and forth the way he postures or whatever. It's as if they never read his book. I mean, his the way that he handles negotiations and deals doesn't happen overnight. It goes back and forth. There's a lot of posturing. There's a lot of yelling and screaming. There's a lot of acting. Um, what I'm telling my clients, what I'm telling my audience, because I can see where this is going. The Trump administration is going to work out deals with our major trading partners, Canada, Mexico, Europe, the EC, some partners in Asia. He might be going back and forth. He might change his mind a little bit until we get to that end result, but it's not going to happen overnight. It's probably going to happen over the next 6 months or so. So we're going to have to just weather that. But I can assure you that in the end, we're going to get deals with these countries, and they're mostly going to be favoring the U.S. And you know why they're going to favor the U.S., Elaine, is because there's a map that I put up when I speak, and it shows all of the country, all the states in the country represented by GDP of other countries. So like the entire GDP of Mexico is the size of the state of Florida, the entire GDP. Canada's GDP is the size of the state of Texas. That's it. The UK's GDP is the size of California. Sweden's GDP is like the size of North Carolina. And I only mentioned Sweden because I'm a big ABBA fan. But you get my point. There's GDP itself is when Trump looks at that map, he's like, we have the upper hand. People should be coming to us to do the deals. We need to level the balance, the trading, and that's going to happen. That is going to happen. There'll be some uncertainty over the next few months, but that will happen. Here's what we really have to we really have to know longer term. All that he's doing right now is all about China. It's all about China. They are our biggest trading threat. They're our biggest military threat that is out there as well. He tried in his first administration to rein back China with significant tariffs and significant rules over stealing technology and having to require equity ownership of American companies and playing games in customs and all of that kind. I mean, it was very onerous stuff, and then it all fell apart because of COVID, So China is, in the end, really what this is all about. And what Trump is going to be doing is he is going to be continuing to press hard, not only for significant tariffs on Chinese goods, but he's going to be penalizing our trading partners for buying materials from China as a way to get at China. That is really what the end game is. And so if you're a small business and you are doing business with China, if you are relying on Chinese products or if you have Chinese partners, you got to really rethink your plan. I mean, the writing is on the wall. You've been told this a bunch of times. None of the stuff that Trump is doing is any different than what he said during his campaign or after he got elected. I have a lot of clients that saw that writing on the wall and have been, over the past couple of years, have been moving their operations away. I have a client that sells overhead doors, garage doors or whatever. Like 70% of their materials were coming from China back in 2019. Now it's like down to like 20% because they're not idiots. They see where this is going. So again, I know it's a long answer to a short question, but you asked for my crystal ball. Over the next 6 months, we will work things out with our major trading partners, and it will generally benefit the U.S. But the warning sign that I'm telling everybody is, if you're doing business with China, you really got to change. You got to find alternate suppliers. You have to pay attention to that because that's, in the end, that's where he's really going with these tariffs.
Make the connection for us. There's been a lot of announcements from foreign companies of making investments in the U.S. There's been announcements of U.S. companies making investments in the U.S. Make the connection for us to the tariffs. Why? Again, we talked about the high interest rates influencing how business makes decisions. Let's talk about how the tariffs are influencing the decision to invest in the U.S.
Right. So, and by the way, the decisions that are being made, which there have been many significant ones from Nvidia to Toyota. Toyota has hundreds of millions of dollars in plants in the U.S. And by the way, that impacts so many. Well, this is a small business conversation, right? So think about all of the small business contractors and suppliers, vendors, consultants, landscapers that would benefit from Toyota investing hundreds of millions of dollars.
Dry cleaners.
Dry cleaners, yeah. You took the words out of my mouth. Toyota then hires more employees here in the U.S. to do the work. These people, like you and I, we like to eat pizza, and we got to get our shirts dry cleaned and go out to local restaurants and put gas in our tanks. It just has this trickle down effect among all of Main Street and businesses when the work comes back here. So it's not going to happen overnight, but that is the general direction that things, where things are going. Where people say like, oh, the economy was fine and we're a service economy and we're just buying everything from overseas because that's where it's cheaper and that's all well and good. In the end, it's really not all that's well and good for this country. Not only is it an infrastructure problem and a national security problem and a resource issue, but it's also just an economic issue from what I cover for small businesses, because, the more work that is done here in the U.S., the more benefit that you have for small businesses across all industries. That is the connection between tariffs, to encourage more businesses to move their operations here to the U.S. And, again, you and I are small business advocates. How can you not support that kind of thing?
Um, there's been a lot of coverage on the One Big Beautiful Bill and its recent passage on July 4th.
Yeah,
And the significance of that bill passing cannot be overstated.
right.
And that's because the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, the lower individual and small business tax rates were made permanent.
Yeah. So, first of all, I did an interview last week with a guy who was citing this survey from this like left-leaning organization of business owners. And by the way, I get a lot of surveys, and I'm sure you must feel the same way. You really have to look into, okay, where's this information coming from? Because everybody's got their agenda, and they were against. They did not support the Big Beautiful Bill. They didn't like one of the biggest things in the Big Beautiful was the pass through deduction for small businesses, right? So like Elaine, again, not to insult your audience, but you own a pass through business, an S corporation or a partnership, like 95% of small businesses, you get a 20% deduction on your income before it passes through to your individual tax return. So you made $1,000 last year, you only get taxed on 800. This organization opposed it because they felt like it benefited the wealthy. you know, and I hear that. Yeah, I'm like, I'd love that the person from that organization to come to the contractors in Wisconsin that I just spoke to yesterday and get up on stage and make that claim. I mean, the guy would be like carried off the stage and tarred and feathered. You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
I'm out there speaking to these business owners in all these industries. I mean, are they the wealthy? I mean, I don't know. I mean, they're all running businesses and they benefit, and then they take that money and they reinvest. So the tax benefits from this bill, and I wrote about this during the campaign. If Harris had been elected, my personal tax bill would have gone up 40%. 40%. I would have lost that pass-through deduction. Deductions on my individual returns would have gone down. The state tax exemptions would have gone up. I gave a whole bunch of reasons why, like my whatever, and I have 10 employees in my little piddly business. I mean, imagine all the other people around the country who are affected by that. So we dodged that bullet.
There's no question that the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act and those lower tax rates did benefit
Yes.
Main Street America and small businesses disproportionately over the rich. And isn't it I do a terrible job of explaining this, but it really was a budget gimmick that they were able to make the claim that the bulk of the tax cuts were going to the millionaires and billionaires, and it was because of the expiration, and that it was a number. It was like, this much is they're going to be able
Right.
to deduct this much, and Main Street only deducts this much. It was a number instead of the percentage, and it had to do with the 10-year expiration of, or 10-year outlook of it. And so in reality, though, I mean, it's right. Like the small businesses and Main Street America, they benefited the most.
Yeah, I mean, they not only do they benefit the most from and again, we don't have time to go into the details of all the different benefits. And for all of you guys watching or listening to this, talk to your accountant now because it's all clarified. But I just have to make one point, Elaine, about, and again, I've written about this a number of times, the attack on the wealthy and the millionaires and the billionaires and all that. They're the ones that benefit and all that. I laugh at that because I know very wealthy people. They don't make their money and take a big pile of it and put it in their bedroom. Do you know what I mean? Like, the money is invested, and they're the ones that are hiring people and buying property and investing in businesses.
Or
And
donating
even
to
if
charity.
Yes, or donating to okay, I'm glad you brought that up. I mean, just last week, my wife and I went to this event. It was a construction company in outside of Philadelphia. I'm going to name them Keating Construction, family-owned business for like a million years. Yes, of course, these guys are wealthy. They run a construction company. They've been around for a long time. You know what they just did, Elaine? They just bought this huge property out in Berks County, Pennsylvania. All these buildings that they're starting a camp for underprivileged kids and kids that have like educational needs and homeless children, whatever. Because that's what the wealthy do. They take the money and they spend it on foundations and charities. And even if they keep it invested, well, okay, they leave their money with Goldman Sachs. What does Goldman Sachs do with that money? They turn around and they invest it in startups and other businesses that hire just whenever I hear this, like, oh, well, the wealthy get it, so therefore everybody's screwed. And again, you and I, because we cover small businesses, again, it's the small businesses that benefit from this stuff because we serve those people happily. My best clients are, frankly, my biggest clients. So to answer your question, yeah, this bill, it is beneficial for small businesses. There is a number of tax benefits and deductions. Does it benefit the wealthy? Good. I hope it does, because that also benefits small business. And one other thing about this bill that I want to, is very important to know. It took a lot of the provisions from 2017, like that small business deduction, deductions for writing off capital equipment and bonus depreciation and research and development expenses, made them permanent. Permanent. And in the 20 plus years that I've been practicing accounting, actually I'm 60, so it's a lot more than 20 years. But anyway, in the many years I've been practicing accounting, I've never seen that before. This is unbelievable. Like, it's always been like, yeah, we'll extend it for 3 years. And then 3 years from later, where everybody's got to go back and forth. So then I have clients saying to me, I don't know, do I buy this asset or not? Is it beneficial? I guess I'll just hold back because I don't know what's going to happen. Now that all these things are permanent, I have clients that are like, all right, we can invest in that building. We can buy that piece of equipment now. I know that deduction is not going to go away 2 years from now. When this expires. I think that's an enormous thing for businesses, and that's underappreciated as part of this bill.
Agreed. Like I said, those have gotten a lot of the press coverage, as well as the Medicaid cuts. There's some areas of this bill that are like so great and just haven't gotten enough coverage. And that there's three areas, and that's the education freedom or school choice, however you want to phrase it, the college debt changes, and the healthcare costs that have changed. Let's talk a little bit about the changes with school choice, because it's the first time that we're having school choice at the federal level, which I think is going to do an amazing job at waking up people who are living in Democratic run states who don't have access to this because their state government would never consider passing it and going against the teachers union. And so they're going to get a little taste of what it is. Talk to us about what the bill does.
So, I mean, the bill gives vouchers and allows, now from a federal level for, parents to actually, not have to send their kids to their local public school. They're given the options other than that. I live in Philadelphia. The school district of Philadelphia has got a number of charter schools. My wife runs a nonprofit that provides literacy for kids with dyslexia, regardless of their economic means. So, if they can't afford it, she has, funders that will pay for these kids to learn. Otherwise, it's, you've heard of from like the school to the prison pipeline, when you don't know how to read. So she's been in the world of both public schools as a teacher, private schools, and chartered schools as well. The teachers union here in Philadelphia fight these chartered schools, Elaine, like tooth and nail. They hate it, because God forbid you have a choice to go to a school that might specialize in engineering or sciences or just provide a better education than having been forced to go to your local public school. The chartered schools, because they're independently run, have different mandates. They have different milestones they have to meet. They have different qualifications they have to meet to stay in existence and continue to get their funding, which is good. Whereas if you just go to a regular Philadelphia public school, I think the literacy rate in the city of Philadelphia, I am not kidding, it's less than 30% of the students in this school system are literate. And the rates are higher in the chartered schools overall, because there's more incentive to teach the kids there because of the way that they are structured. And to be a parent and not have that choice, it is just absolutely evil. It is absolutely evil. So this bill gives them the choice.
I agree. And 17 states, for the record, now have education freedom. I live in Florida. We have one of the top programs under Governor DeSantis. We've gone from being the worst in the nation on education, one of the worst in the nation on education, to being first. And that's what education freedom has done.
Yep. And again, this is, you and I are small business Main Street people, this all now trickles or filters up to small businesses because now we can have a smarter workforce, kids graduating college that, oh my God, Elaine, know how to read. or can do math, they can, as business owners, we now have more of a population of skilled or qualified people that we can hire for our companies. And you asked at the very beginning of this conversation when we started 6 hours ago to like, what was like the biggest issues facing these small businesses? And I didn't even mention it. It remains finding and retaining good talent.
Yeah.
It's still a tight labor market. And the school choice thing, I think, will, again, over time, have a huge impact to help us meet that challenge.
Yeah, yeah. Second, not covered issue in the bill is the college debt crisis, and that this bill does begin to address the college debt crisis. I think I mentioned to you, I've said it many times on air. We're one of the two cases that that went to the Supreme Court under the Biden administration, challenging his student debt bailout.
Yeah.
This bill at least begins to have the conversation and starts to curb some of this. Tell us a little bit about that if
It
you've got.
it begins it, but it is also a there's a lot more to do. There's a lot more to do. I mean, our higher education system is, again, it is terrible. It is not preparing kids for the future as it should be. I have my son, took engineering, in college and then graduated and then had to be basically trained from, ground zero to learn the engineering work at the firm that he went to work for, and again, small business impact, that's not fair on these companies. You expect kids to come out of a higher education after spending 200 grand or more than that, and being able to do their jobs. And now the employers still have to provide this training to get them to that level. It's a big issue. So yeah, the bill takes some steps to address that issue as well. But the real step is just curbing what these institutions can charge, and and taking a harder look and having mandates as to their what their overhead and what their staffing is, and is it really necessary to have hot and cold running toilets and 24/7 sushi for your students? All of that has to be looked at. But again, the bill itself is a good first step in that direction.
Yeah, definitely. Last is the changes in an expansion in our HSAs, health savings
Yep.
accounts, which allows people to now put away additional money. I think it's almost double. It's
Doubling.
$10,800 for individuals, 21,600 for families. What is the impact of that, where you put people in charge of their health care?
So, if you're a business owner and you're watching or listening to this and you don't have an HSA, get one. You might have been limited in the past depending on the kind of plan that you were allowing, but with this new legislation, it's pretty much available for all different plans, which is it increases the availability for that. Like you just said, it doubles the amount that we can put away. Again, not to insult anybody's intelligence, but an HSA as health savings account, it's like a 401k for your healthcare. You put money away pre-tax, so it lowers your taxable income. It goes into this account. It then grows tax-free, and then you can take it out without any penalty or anything like that in the future, and then use that for healthcare expenses that you might not, your healthcare plan isn't covering. And the beauty of these plans is that they roll over and they stay with you, and they can be portable with you as well if you're an employee. So that's like a huge benefit. And our population is aging. So you talk about the impact and the effects. Great if you're maxing out your 401k, max out your HSA too, because as we get older, our bones get brittle, and we're going to have issues, health issues. You might as well be putting away all this pre-tax money so that you can use it in the future for your healthcare without any, just like your 401k, you pull that out. Here, you can use it for healthcare. There's no minimum distribution requirements on it either. You can now put money away and actually take money out for your fitness. So I don't know if you knew that, Elaine, or not. Like, so if you're belonging to like a health club, yeah, cool. You can like put money away pre-tax, save on the taxes, take the money out the next year and use it for your fitness fees.
The
And
gyms must love that.
gyms must love, and it's like a 20% savings if your tax rate is 20%. You just boom, you save that. So it is a great benefit, and will have not only an impact for older employees to keep them around longer, But I think for, again, small businesses here, it's an easy benefit to make available. We're all trying to attract and retain good employees. To me, it's like a no-brainer, and you should be encourage your employees to put money away in their HSAs, because as they get older, they'll use it.
I agree. Like I said, I've talked a lot about the last couple of weeks with different guests. Some of them are small business owners who can speak directly from the front lines. This is what I'm going to do now that this bill has passed. To the economics and folks who are financial whiz people. But your point of view, I haven't had, and so and that's being that person who is talking to small business owners every day, because you are helping them make decisions based on the policies that are coming out of DC.
Yeah, I appreciate that very much. And you know what? As much as I'm a fan of the big beautiful bill, I still have concerns long term about deficits, Elaine. I really do. And I am, and I'm telling my audience, like I told the guys in Wisconsin yesterday, is that unless the government, we have $36 trillion in debt, we have $2 trillion annual deficit. All the amazing work that Elon Musk was doing, and it was amazing work, and it's unbelievable that people like hate Elon Musk. I don't get that, but okay. To reduce federal spending, it's barely making any kind of a dent. It is unless we find some ways to address this deficit, all that's going to happen is the Federal Reserve is just going to be printing more money. We're going to inflate our way out of it. And one of my biggest concerns for all of us as business owners is that over the next 5 years or so, the inflation and interest you and I were talking about earlier, I don't know if that's going to be going away if all we're doing is printing more money. And interest now is like 15 to 16% of our total government spending. It terrifies me as that number gets higher. It's got to be paid for somehow. And so I have those concerns. As much as I love the bill, I don't know what politician will ever be able to actually rein in our deficits. And that's another topic for another day, I guess.
Well, I think it's the statement, we don't have a revenue problem, we have a spending problem, has probably never been more true than right now.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's whenever I hear the cuts that are being made across the board, I'll give you a great example. SCORE had its budget cut. Okay. It's federal. SCORE is part of the SBA, and great organization. I know Bridget Weston is the CEO there, and they really run. And I just wrote a piece for Entrepreneur Magazine about how, like, all right, I mean, like, I would like to have free healthcare. I would like to have free education. I know there's a lot of great studies that are out there and a lot of things that we would all like to be spending money on, but it's just not unlimited money, and SCORE is a perfect example. I mean, I'm an advocate for small business, and it's a shame, they do help businesses out with consulting or whatever, but like perfect example, we can't afford it all, and so we have to do something to rein in spending and change the mindset that, like, everything just gets paid for. Like there's no, it's like a bottomless pit or a blank check. And I don't know if that's going to change, but we've got to address it because it's going to impact the way we run our businesses in a more inflationary and a higher interest rate world.
Yeah, for sure. Well, Jean, how can people find you if they're interested in having you come and speak, or if they're interested in your accounting services?
Neither. What I'm more interested in, if you're a business owner, is that you get the information that I write about, so that it helps you run your business. So I write in a bunch of different places, but everything I do, I put on my Medium account. So if you go to genemarks.medium.com, you'll see it all every day. I repost there. And that way, if you read those articles, I cover so many different things that'll help you run your business. That's what I would care about.
Great. genemarks.medium.com. If you're interested in reading any articles by Jean Marks. Well, Jean, thanks so much for taking the time to join us today on Main Street Matters, America's Small Business Megaphone. Main Street Matters is part of the Salem Podcast Network. New episodes debut every Wednesday and Friday. You can find the audio version anywhere you get your podcasts, and you can watch the show on the Job Creators Network channels on YouTube and Rumble. We'll be back soon with another episode. Bye for now.